My grandfather used to say, "True success doesn't need a spotlight. It needs patience." I didn't fully understand what he meant until the night I was called a poor waitress at a luxury gala, right before the room fell silent, and my sister's boss realized who I really was. My name is Rosalie, and for most of my life, I let others define me by what they saw. An apron, a bakery, a life that looked small from the outside. My sister, Clarissa, made sure of that. To her, I was always the less impressive sibling, someone who never quite fit into the polished image she projected. I kept my world quiet, and my success even quieter. But that night, that night, something shifted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't seek revenge. I just let the truth walk into the room, and when it did, everything they believed about me shattered. If you've ever been underestimated, written off, or pushed to the shadows by your own family, then stay with me. Because this isn't just a story about power. It's about dignity, and what happens when the woman they dismissed ends up owning the very company they built their pride on. I grew up above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and survival. My mother ran the place, a modest corner shop in a working-class part of New Jersey, where neighbors knew each other's kids, and rent checks sometimes waited on grace. My earliest memories aren't of cartoons or playgrounds. They're of counting coins, folding pink cake boxes, and waking before dawn to beat the first rush of morning regulars. I didn't hate it. In fact, I learned more behind that glass pastry counter than most kids learned in classrooms. I learned rhythm, grit, and how to look people in the eye, especially when they tried not to look at you. By the time I was 15, I was managing inventory. At 17, I was reading business books between frosting cupcakes. My real education came after hours, when I'd hole up in the back office with my mother's old laptop, studying supply chain models and learning how microloans worked. It didn't feel ambitious back then. It felt necessary. Our margins were thin. The work was endless. And I wanted more than survival. I wanted something scalable. Clarissa, on the other hand, always hated the smell of flour. She wore gloves to help out in the kitchen, and even then, only when cameras were around. Where I saw possibility in our family's hustle, she saw embarrassment. She escaped the moment she could, enrolling in a top-tier business school and disappearing into a world of sharp suits and rooftop brunches. And to be fair, she climbed fast. Clarissa was always polished, always poised, always someone's favorite success story at dinner parties. The daughter who made it out. Meanwhile, I stayed behind. Not because I lacked ambition, but because I was building something of my own. At 23, I launched Nuvia Capital, a fintech startup focused on bridging lending gaps for immigrants and small business owners, people like my mom. I didn't take funding from the usual venture capitalists. I bootstrapped, reinvested profits, and partnered quietly with credit unions and community organizations. It was never flashy. It was never loud. But it worked. By 28, we'd gone national. But I still helped at the bakery some weekends. Not for the money, for the grounding. It reminded me who I was. Clarissa didn't see it that way. To her, I was wasting potential. She once told me flat out, "You're brilliant, Ro, but you'll never be taken seriously if you keep smelling like buttercream and spreadsheets." I smiled, said nothing. What she didn't know was that one of our biggest licensing clients had just signed a multi-million-dollar agreement. A client she worked for. It was easier that way, being underestimated. People revealed their real selves when they thought you were beneath them, and I was content to let Clarissa play her game. At least I was. Until she decided to drag me into it. Clarissa had no idea that the startup I tinkered with, on the side, had grown into a quiet empire. I never posted about Nuvia Capital on social media. No launch parties, no flashy press releases. Just milestones stacked like bricks. Private contracts, licensing deals, scalable analytics, and solid revenue streams. Our software helped small businesses run smarter and access credit faster. In the eyes of banks and data firms, we were essential. In the eyes of my family, I was still just Rosalie from the bakery. That used to bother me. Now, it amused me. I remember one Sunday dinner where Clarissa clinked her wine glass and with a sigh that could cut granite, asked me how my little cupcake app was going. She said it loud enough for the table to hear. but with that faux polite tone that made it sound like she was being supportive. I told her it was doing well. What I didn't tell her was that her firm, Valine and Cross, had been using our back-end analytics for nearly 8 months. My team had onboarded them under a white label contract. She had no clue. "Don't get me wrong," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Baking is a noble trade. And the tech stuff you do, it's cute, but it's not real scale, Ro. It's not leadership." I looked at her, wondering if she'd still say that if she knew I held voting shares that could block her next campaign proposal. I doubted it. Still, I let her have her moment. She needed it more than I did. You see, Clarissa's pride was made of glass, perfectly polished, but one crack away from ruin. And every time she put me down in front of our parents, I could see her desperation. She needed to believe she'd risen above me, that I was still the girl behind the pastry case, grateful for crumbs. But I'd stopped playing that part long ago. The truth is, I never wanted Clarissa's world. I didn't need business cards embossed in gold, or to be called senior director at cocktail parties. I wanted impact. I wanted autonomy. And I had both. I spent my weekdays finalizing a merger that would change the future of community financing, and my weekends elbow-deep in bakery receipts, helping my mom transition to digital ordering. I wore yoga pants to board meetings and flats to financial briefings. And I answered to no one. That's the thing about building quietly. People assume you're standing still until you move. And by the time they notice, it's too late to catch up. The week before everything changed, I got a call from our legal counsel. The final stage of negotiations was near. If all went smoothly, Nuvia Capital would acquire a controlling interest in Valine and Cross. Yes, Clarissa's prestigious firm. The irony was almost poetic. I could have told her. I could have sent her a gift-wrapped NDA just to watch her jaw drop. But I didn't. I waited. Because sometimes silence is sharper than confrontation. And because I knew what was coming next. The invitation that would set everything in motion. "Ro," Clarissa said one evening as we cleared dishes at our parents' house, "I have a favor to ask. I'm hosting a formal gala next month. It's for my promotion. Big deal. Lots of partners. Would you help coordinate the food? I know you're good with event stuff." She didn't mean it as a compliment. Before I could answer, Mom clapped her hands. "That's perfect. Ro's amazing with logistics. It'll be flawless." Clarissa gave me a look that said, "Stay in your place." And I gave her one that said, "Gladly." "Sure," I said. "I'd be happy to help." I walked out of that dinner carrying 2 things, a casserole dish and the weight of my sister's condescension. Clarissa had no clue she'd just handed me the stage. She thought she was putting me in my place, assigning me to the background like always, near the trays and tablecloths, not the podiums or power. But I had no intention of correcting her, not yet. That night, as I rinsed dishes at my mother's sink, my phone buzzed with a name that made me pause. James Vance, CEO of Valine and Cross, Clarissa's boss. "Rosalie," the email read, "I've been informed you're the founder of Nuvia Capital. Would love to meet. I'll be attending our internal celebration next month. If you'll be there, perhaps we can connect in person." It took me a minute to process the delicious symmetry. Clarissa had unknowingly invited me to cater the same event where her boss hoped to meet the woman about to take over his company. I stared at the glowing screen, then at my reflection in the microwave door. My hair was tied up, my sweatshirt stained with flour, and there I was, being addressed not as someone's sister, but as someone of consequence. I didn't respond to the email right away. I didn't need to. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, leaned back against the counter, and let the stillness settle in. The kind of stillness that comes right before the curtain rises. Over the next few weeks, Clarissa peppered me with passive-aggressive texts about catering vendors, menu options, and delivery times. "Make sure the hors d'oeuvres are upscale," she wrote. "Last thing I need is anything that feels too homemade. Too homemade, like our childhood, like me." I kept my replies short, professional. Noted. Confirmed. All set. Meanwhile, I worked with my CFO and legal team to finalize the acquisition. Quietly, thoroughly, with precision. And with every document signed, every clause secured, The vision sharpened. This wouldn't just be a merger. It would be a reckoning. 2 nights before the event, Ryan, my longtime partner, noticed the tension in my shoulders as I laid out my black dress. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked, watching me from the doorway. "You don't have to play along just to prove something." "I'm not proving anything," I said, smoothing the fabric between my fingers. "I'm just showing up." Ryan sighed. "She doesn't deserve this level of grace, Ro." "No," I said quietly, "but I do. I deserve to walk into that room without shame, without needing to explain or justify anything. I'm not doing this to humiliate her." I looked up at him then. "I'm doing it so she never confuses silence with weakness again." He didn't have a response. The night before the gala, I sent one final message to Clarissa. "All vendors confirmed. Timing in place. I'll be on site at 4 p.m. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I smiled. The last piece had clicked into place. All I had to do now was serve. The Whitmore estate shimmered under lights like a dream Clarissa had choreographed. Crystal glasses, a string quartet, ice sculptures that would melt before dessert. And me, exactly where she wanted me, in the kitchen. Clarissa had tasked me with overseeing the catering crew. Her voice, sharp and sweet, had reminded me to stay behind the scenes. I nodded. Of course. As I walked through the party with a tray in hand, I heard my name float out from her lips like perfume meant to stain. "That's my sister, Rosalie," she told a group of executives. "She's helping out. Always loved the hospitality stuff. Poor thing." Soft chuckles followed. My mother added her usual line. "We try to include her, of course. She chose her path." No one noticed the text I received just then. "Deal closed. 51%. Effective immediately." James Vance arrived shortly after. Clarissa rushed over, all grace and charm. "Mr. Vance! We're honored." He nodded, scanned the room, then saw me. His brow furrowed. "Oh, don't worry about her," Clarissa said. "That's my sister, just helping the staff." "Wait," James said, stepping forward. "That's Rosalie?" I handed off my tray and smiled. "Hello, James. I'm glad you made it." He laughed, eyes widening. "Serving drinks at your own party? I suppose this is how you keep people humble." Clarissa blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Miss Rosalie is the CEO of Nuvia Capital," James said smoothly. "And as of 15 minutes ago, she owns controlling interest in Valine and Cross." The room froze. Clarissa's glass slipped and shattered. "There must be a mistake," she whispered. "She bakes." James chuckled. "And runs the company that now owns your department." Our mother went pale. I turned to Clarissa, voice quiet but clear. "You mocked me for years. Dismissed me like I didn't belong. You never asked what I was building. You just assumed it didn't matter." Ryan stepped forward, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him. "Because I needed to know if you'd respect me without the title. Turns out you didn't." James cleared his throat. "Shall we make it official?" I nodded. "Gladly." I turned to Clarissa. "I believe you had a speech prepared. Still want to give it?" She fled the room. I picked up a champagne glass, tapped it gently, and said, "If I may have your attention." After the announcement, the room didn't just quiet, it collapsed inward. Whispers rose like static. I could feel eyes on me, not with pity anymore, but with unease. No one knew where to look. Clarissa had vanished down the hall, her heels clacking like thunder against the marble. Our mother chased after her, too stunned to say a word. My father stood by the bar, frozen, drink in hand. James Vance gave me a firm handshake and leaned in. "That," he said with a faint grin, "was the most graceful hostile takeover I've ever witnessed." I gave a soft chuckle. "Not hostile, just overdue." He nodded. "And poetic." As guests murmured and awkwardly resumed sipping their drinks, Ryan approached. His face was pale, his movements hesitant. "Rosalie, you really built all of this?" "I did," I said plainly. "Why didn't you tell me?" I studied his face, searching for any trace of the man I thought I knew. "I wanted to, but every time you stood silent while your family belittled me, I realized something. If you didn't defend me as a baker, you never deserved me as a CEO." His throat tightened. "But I love you." Then you should have respected me. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. Love without respect is theater, and I'm done performing. I turned away just as Clarissa re-entered the room, her makeup repaired, but her eyes wild. You humiliated me, she snapped in a hushed tone, in front of my clients, my mentors, my team. No, I said calmly, you humiliated yourself. I just stopped covering for you. She folded her arms. Fine, I'll resign. I refuse to work under you. That's your choice, but before you go, know this. Every major firm in Miami already knows what happened tonight. The way you spoke about me, about people like me, that won't disappear. Clarissa hesitated. The bravado began to crumble. What do you want from me? I want you to learn. She looked confused. Starting Monday, I continued, you'll be working with our Community Impact Division. We're launching a program to support local restaurants and minority-owned businesses. You'll be helping them restructure finances. And who, she asked bitterly, will I be reporting to? I smiled. Our project lead, my mother. She still runs the bakery, by choice, not because she failed at something else. Clarissa's mouth fell open, but before she could answer, our mother stepped forward. Rosalie, maybe we could talk about this privately, she said, her voice uneven. We're family. I turned slowly. Family? For years, you cropped me out of photos, made me sit with the help, and whispered like I wasn't even there. At what point did I stop being family? My mother's eyes welled up. We didn't know you had money. That's the problem, I said quietly. You thought my worth came from money. And then, for the first time in my life, my father spoke up. She's right, he said. The entire room turned. Rosalie has every reason to turn away from us. I sat by and let this happen. We lost sight of what mattered. It was the most I'd ever heard him say in one breath. He stepped toward me. We failed you. I nodded, not out of triumph, but clarity. I know. Then I turned to Clarissa. Be at the bakery Monday morning. Mom doesn't tolerate lateness. By the time the guests had filtered out, the Whitmore estate felt less like a triumph and more like a museum after closing. Pretty, but hollow. I didn't wait for anyone's goodbye. I simply left. Outside, the night air was thick with the scent of salt and citrus. My phone buzzed as I got into my car. Dad, come by the bakery. Your mom saved you a plate. I didn't hesitate. On my way. 20 minutes later, I stepped through the back door of our family bakery. The lights were low, but the smell of cinnamon and dough still lingered like a promise. My mother stood at the counter, still in her gala heels, a faded apron tied around her waist. You're early, she said gently. Old habits. I grabbed a cloth and wiped down the front counter, like I'd done 100 times before. My father came in from the back with empanadas. We sat, we ate, and for the first time in a long while, it was quiet. Not the kind of silence that hides pain, but the kind that heals. You still come back here? My mom asked, surprised. Always, I replied. It reminds me who I am. She studied me. I misjudged you. No, I said softly. You just believed what was easiest to see. She nodded, eyes heavy. You're not angry? I was, I admitted. But anger is exhausting. I'd rather build. We talked about Clarissa, about the bakery, about what would happen Monday when she reported for her new job under our mother's supervision. She'll learn, Mom said. Or she won't, I replied. But either way, she'll face herself. Before I left, I stood behind the counter once more, tracing the old register with my fingers. People had called me weak for being quiet, invisible for being kind. But silence isn't weakness. It's knowing when to speak so no one forgets what you said. I never wanted revenge, just clarity. And tonight, I got it. If you've ever been underestimated or pushed to the side, keep building, keep showing up. Let them talk, let them doubt. Because one day, when the noise fades, all that's left standing will be the truth. And you.